A simple woman was denied a room in her billionaire husband's luxury hotel. The staff humiliated her in front of everyone, but when he arrived and saw what they had done, his reaction left the entire hotel staff in shock. Beth Mitchell stepped into the opulent lobby of the Mitchell Grand Hotel, her presence a stark contrast to the luxury that surrounded her. At just 32, she exuded a quiet confidence, though exhaustion weighed on her shoulders after a long day teaching at her community art program. Her paint-splattered gray t-shirt, light denim jacket, and worn jeans spoke volumes about her priorities. She valued purpose over appearance. The gray and white trucker cap pulled low over her brown ponytail completed an image that seemed out of place among the elegantly dressed guests mingling near the grand piano, their conversations punctuated by the gentle notes of classical music. As she adjusted her backpack, Beth became acutely aware of the dried paint under her fingernails. She approached the reception desk, where two impeccably dressed employees stood at attention. Just 30 minutes earlier, she had spoken briefly with her husband, Robert, who had suggested she stay at his hotel after a long day. The thought of driving 2 more hours to their countryside home had made her weary bones ache, and when Robert promised to arrange a room for her, it felt like the perfect solution. "Good evening," Beth said, with a tired smile to the male receptionist, whose name tag read Bradley. "I'm Beth Mitchell. My husband should have called about a room for me." Bradley's eyes swept over her appearance, his professional smile tightening almost imperceptibly. "Do you have identification, madam?" His tone was laced with skepticism, which Beth could sense immediately. "Of course." She dug through her backpack, retrieving her wallet and presenting her driver's license. "Elizabeth Mitchell." Bradley examined the license with exaggerated care, then glanced at his female colleague, Emma, who raised an eyebrow slightly. "And you say Mr. Mitchell arranged a room for you?" His tone made it clear he was doubtful. "Yes, just a few minutes ago. Robert Mitchell, he owns this hotel." Beth kept her voice steady, though fatigue was beginning to fray her patience. The two receptionists exchanged glances, and Emma leaned forward, her voice lowered, but still audible to nearby guests. "Ma'am, this is a 5-star luxury hotel. Perhaps there's been some confusion." Beth felt her cheeks flush. "There's no confusion. I'm Elizabeth Mitchell, Robert Mitchell's wife. He owns this hotel chain." The lobby had grown quieter, with several guests now watching the exchange with interest. "Of course you are," Bradley said, his voice dripping with condescension. "And I'm the Queen of England." Emma stepped forward, barely masking her disdain. "Listen, we get this occasionally. People think claiming a connection to the Mitchell family will get them special treatment." "I'm not claiming anything," Beth said firmly, her voice remaining level. "I am Elizabeth Mitchell. My husband is Robert Mitchell. He owns this hotel chain." A well-dressed couple nearby had stopped to watch, whispering to each other. "Mrs. Mitchell," Bradley emphasized her name with obvious disbelief, "is a former model who serves on multiple charity boards. She attended the Met Gala last month." His eyes swept over Beth's paint-stained jeans and casual t-shirt. "Perhaps you'd like to try another establishment better suited to your circumstances?" Beth felt a surge of indignation, not for herself, but for what his words represented. The assumption that worth was tied to appearance, that a woman married to wealth must look and behave a certain way. "My husband called ahead. Please check your system." Bradley sighed dramatically, making a show of typing on his computer. No reservation under Elizabeth or Beth Mitchell. No note from Mr. Mitchell either. He looked up with feigned sympathy. "How surprising. Could you call him, please?" Beth asked, maintaining her composure despite the growing audience. "Call Mr. Mitchell directly?" Emma laughed lightly. "Mr. Mitchell is one of the wealthiest businessmen in America. We don't just call him because someone in a trucker hat claims to be his wife." Beth took a deep breath. "Then call the manager on duty." "That won't be necessary," Bradley replied. "Listen, we're very busy with actual guests." He gestured to the growing line behind Beth. "The Cozy Inn 6 blocks down might have availability." A distinguished older man in line spoke up. "Is there a problem here?" Emma turned to him with a completely transformed expression. Warm, welcoming, respectful. "No problem at all, sir. Just directing this person to more suitable accommodations." "I'm not leaving," Beth said quietly but firmly. "My husband is Robert Mitchell. This is his hotel, and I'd like to speak to the manager now. Bradley's smile vanished entirely. Security will escort you out if necessary. Just then, as if on cue, a security guard approached. Everything all right here? He asked. This woman is refusing to leave, Bradley explained. She's claiming to be Mrs. Mitchell and causing a disturbance. The security guard, a middle-aged man named Frank, turned to Beth. Ma'am, I'll have to ask you to come with me. Several guests were now openly watching, some with phones raised. Beth felt a rush of embarrassment wash over her but stood her ground. This wasn't just about her anymore. It was about every person who'd ever been judged by their appearance rather than their character. I'm not causing a disturbance, she said clearly. I'm trying to check into my husband's hotel after a long day of work. Frank looked uncomfortable, but maintained his professional stance. Please don't make this difficult, ma'am. I want to speak to your general manager. Bradley's voice sharpened. Richard is at a conference in New York. I'm the most senior staff member on duty. Then call Richard, or better yet, call Robert Mitchell directly. I guarantee he'll be interested to hear how you're treating his wife. An elegant woman in designer clothes, who had been watching the exchange, approached Bradley. Perhaps you should check again. This seems like a misunderstanding that could become awkward. Bradley straightened his tie. Mrs. Pembroke, I assure you we know the Mitchell family well. This woman is not. Mrs. Pembroke looked at Beth with a mixture of pity and embarrassment. Of course, I just thought. It's fine, Beth interrupted. I appreciate your concern. She turned back to Bradley. I'm going to sit in the lobby and wait for my husband. He'll be here soon. I've been more than patient, Bradley said, his tone hardening. Frank, please escort this person out. The security guard stepped forward reluctantly. Ma'am, please don't make me remove you physically. Beth felt all eyes on her. The wealthy guests, the staff, everyone witnessing her humiliation. For a moment, she considered walking out, avoiding the scene that was unfolding. But something inside her refused to bend. You're making a mistake, she said quietly. The only mistake, Emma interjected, was letting you through the door. We don't serve your kind here. A collective gasp rose from some of the observers. Beth's cheeks burned with anger and embarrassment. My kind? She repeated, incredulous. People looking for handouts, Bradley clarified, his voice loud enough for everyone to hear. People pretending to be something they're not. Frank placed a hand on Beth's arm. Ma'am, please. Beth pulled her arm away. Don't touch me. The tension in the lobby was palpable. Some guests looked uncomfortable, others curious. A few even seemed entertained by the spectacle. Beth stood alone, surrounded by luxury yet made to feel completely worthless because of her appearance. We don't serve the poor, Emma hissed, her professional mask slipping completely. The words hung in the air like a physical presence, shocking in their naked contempt. Even Bradley looked surprised at his colleague's outburst. For Beth, time seemed to slow down in that moment. She wasn't just Beth Mitchell, wife of a billionaire, being denied entry to his hotel. She was every person who'd ever been judged by their clothes, their accent, their appearance, every child in her art program who'd been told they didn't belong, every dreamer dismissed before being given a chance. Frank's grip tightened on her arm. Ma'am, I need you to leave now. As he began to guide her toward the exit, the revolving doors at the entrance spun, and a tall figure in an impeccably tailored suit stepped into the lobby. Robert Mitchell entered the Mitchell Grand with the quiet confidence of a man who knew his place in the world. At 45, his salt-pepper hair and athletic build gave him a distinguished appearance that commanded respect without demanding it. After a long flight, and with meetings scheduled for the morning, all he wanted was to see his wife and enjoy a quiet dinner. As he crossed the marble floor, he immediately noticed the commotion near the reception desk. A crowd had gathered, and at its center, being escorted toward the door by a security guard, was Beth. Robert stopped, taking in the scene with practiced precision. His wife's dignified posture, despite the obvious humiliation, the security guard's uncomfortable but determined grip on her arm, and the smug expressions of the reception staff all spoke volumes. The murmuring crowd of onlookers added to the tension in the air. For a moment, he simply observed, knowing that the most revealing moments came when people thought no one important was watching. As he moved forward silently, he caught fragments of conversation. Can't believe she thought that would work, claiming to be Mrs. Mitchell of all people. Some people have no shame. When Beth spotted him, the relief in her eyes was palpable, but she made no grand gesture or triumphant announcement. Her quiet dignity, her refusal to gloat even now, reminded him of the countless reasons he had fallen in love with her. Robert placed a hand gently on Frank's shoulder, causing the security guard to turn. "Excuse me," Robert said quietly. "Is there a problem here?" Frank's expression shifted from surprise to recognition in an instant. "Mr. Mitchell, sir. You can release my wife's arm now, Frank," Robert said firmly. The words dropped into the lobby like stones into still water, sending ripples of shock through everyone within earshot. "Your wife," Frank stammered, immediately letting go of Beth's arm as if it had suddenly burned him. "Are you all right?" Robert asked softly, moving to Beth's side and placing a protective arm around her shoulders. She nodded, her body relaxing slightly at his presence. "Just a misunderstanding, apparently," Bradley said, his voice unnaturally high. "We had no idea." Robert raised a hand, silencing him instantly. "I'd like to understand exactly what happened here." He looked around at the gathered crowd, the security guard, and finally the reception staff. From the beginning, Bradley's professional composure had completely evaporated. "There's been a terrible misunderstanding, sir. We didn't recognize Mrs. Mitchell." "And you didn't recognize her," Robert repeated, his tone neutral but his eyes sharp. "So naturally, you called security to remove her from the premises." "She didn't look like—" Emma began, then stopped abruptly, realizing too late the implication of her words. "Like what, exactly?" Robert asked, his gaze fixed on her with unsettling intensity. "Like someone who would be Mrs. Mitchell," Emma replied weakly. Robert nodded slowly, as if considering this. "And in your professional opinion, what should Mrs. Mitchell look like?" The question hung in the air, unanswered. Beth squeezed her husband's hand, a silent request for restraint. She didn't want public humiliation as revenge, even for those who had tried to humiliate her. "Perhaps," Robert continued, his voice now addressing the entire lobby, "this is an opportunity for us all to reflect on how quickly we judge others based on appearance." He surveyed the gathered crowd. "How many of you assumed my wife didn't belong here because of how she was dressed?" Several guests looked down uncomfortably, avoiding eye contact. Mrs. Pembroke, the woman who had intervened earlier, stepped forward. "I apologize for not speaking up more forcefully," she said directly to Beth. Beth smiled genuinely. "Thank you for trying." Robert turned back to the reception staff. "Bradley, Emma, my office. Now." He glanced at Frank. "You too." As they moved toward the elevator, Robert paused and turned back to address the lobby once more. "The Mitchell Grand was founded on a principle of exceptional service for all our guests, not just those who fit a certain profile. I'm deeply disappointed that principle was forgotten today." With that, he guided Beth toward the private elevator, leaving a lobby full of stunned guests and staff behind them. Robert's private office on the top floor of the Mitchell Grand offered a sweeping view of Portland's skyline, but no one was admiring the scenery. Bradley, Emma, and Frank stood rigidly before Robert's desk, while Beth sat quietly in a plush chair to the side, her backpack and trucker cap placed on the floor beside her. The contrast could not have been more striking. Beth, and her paint-stained clothes, radiated a quiet dignity that made the opulence around her seem almost superficial. Robert stood by the window for a moment, gathering his thoughts. When he turned to face them, his expression was one of profound disappointment rather than rage. "I founded Mitchell Luxury Properties 15 years ago," he began, his voice measured. "My first hotel was a renovated motel in Seattle with just 28 rooms. I still remember cleaning those rooms myself when we were short-staffed." He moved toward his desk, picking up a framed photo and turning it to show them a much younger Robert in work clothes, standing proudly in front of a modest building. "I started with nothing," he continued. "My father was a janitor, and my mother worked 2 jobs as a waitress. The suits, the office, this hotel chain, they came later." Bradley and Emma exchanged uncomfortable glances. "Sir, we had no idea it was Mrs. Mitchell," Bradley offered, his voice strained. "That's precisely the problem," Robert interrupted. You shouldn't treat anyone the way you treated my wife today, whether they're married to me or not. Emma shifted nervously. We have standards to maintain. Standards? Robert's voice sharpened. Let me tell you about standards. My wife runs an art program that serves children from all backgrounds, children whose lives are transformed because she sees their potential regardless of where they come from or what they wear. He placed the photo back on his desk carefully. Today, while dressed exactly as she is now, Beth helped a boy who hasn't spoken in months express himself through painting. That's her standard. What's yours? Frank, the security guard, looked down at his shoes. Mr. Mitchell, I was just following protocol. Protocol? Robert's expression hardened. Protocol to physically remove someone who wasn't causing a disturbance? Someone who simply didn't fit your image of what a guest should look like. Beth spoke up for the first time. Robert, they were doing their jobs as they understood them. Her voice was gentle but firm. That's the real issue here. Robert's expression softened as he looked at Beth. She continued, addressing the 3 staff members directly. I'm not angry at you personally. I'm troubled by a system that taught you that worth is determined by appearance, but some people deserve dignity and others don't based on how they dress or how much money they seem to have. Bradley's professional veneer cracked, revealing genuine shame. Mrs. Mitchell, I don't know what to say. You don't need to say anything, Beth replied. Just listen. Robert moved to stand behind his desk, every inch the CEO. Here's what's going to happen. Tomorrow morning, I'm calling an emergency meeting of all hotel managers in the Mitchell Group. We're implementing a complete overhaul of our training program with a specific focus on eliminating bias and prejudice in customer service. He turned to Emma. The phrase, "we don't serve your kind" here will never be uttered in any of my hotels again. Am I clear? Emma nodded, her face flushed with embarrassment. Frank, Robert continued, security's job is to protect guests, not intimidate them. New protocols will be developed immediately. Frank straightened. Yes, sir. And Bradley, Robert said finally, as duty manager, the tone you set influences everyone. Your actions today reflected a culture that I never wanted to create in my hotels. Bradley looked as though he might be sick. Will we be terminated, sir? The question hung in the air, and the 3 staff members stood frozen, awaiting their fate. Beth stood and moved to her husband's side. They exchanged a look, a silent communication born of deep understanding and shared values. Robert turned back to the staff. You won't be terminated. Their relief was palpable, but it was short-lived. Instead, he continued, you'll be the first to undergo the new training program, and then you'll help implement it across all our properties. Bradley looked up, surprised. Sir, firing you would be easy, Robert explained. Having you help transform our culture is much more valuable. You'll experience firsthand how bias can lead to horrible misjudgments, which makes you perfect ambassadors for change. Beth smiled, clearly approving of this approach. Sometimes our worst mistakes can lead to our greatest contributions if we're willing to learn from them. Emma, who had been silent, finally spoke. Why would you give us that chance after what we did? Beth answered before Robert could. Because every person deserves the opportunity to grow and change, including you. Robert nodded. Starting tomorrow, Bradley, you'll work with our HR team to develop comprehensive anti-bias training. Emma, you'll be temporarily reassigned to our community outreach program. He turned to Frank. And Frank, you'll help review and revise all security protocols to ensure they're both effective and respectful. The 3 stood straighter, the opportunity for redemption giving them a dignity that their earlier shame had stripped away. One more thing, Robert added. You're each going to spend one day volunteering at my wife's art program. I want you to see firsthand the incredible things that happen when people are valued for who they are, not what they wear or how much money they have. Beth's eyes shone with emotion. This wasn't about punishment or revenge. It was about transformation. That will be all for now, Robert concluded. You can return to your duties. We'll meet again tomorrow morning. As they filed out, each murmured apologies to Beth. She acknowledged them with a nod, her expression neither vindictive nor particularly forgiving, simply human. When the door closed behind them, Robert's formal demeanor melted away. He crossed to Beth and took her hands in his. I'm so sorry you experienced that, he said softly. Beth squeezed his hands. I'm not. Robert looked surprised. You're not? No, Beth shook her head. What happened today was awful, but it happens to people every day who don't have a billionaire husband to set things right. At least this way, something good might come from it. Robert smiled, the private smile reserved only for her. That's why I married you, you know. Your ability to find purpose, even in painful moments. Beth picked up her trucker cap and backpack. So, about that room service and hot bath you promised me. 3 months later, Beth stood in the main lobby of the Mitchell Grand, watching as Bradley welcomed an elderly woman dressed in a simple house dress and worn sweater. The transformation in his demeanor was striking. It was not just professional, but genuine. He escorted her to the elevator with the same respect he would show a visiting dignitary. Quite a change, Robert remarked, appearing at Beth's side. Beth nodded, satisfaction evident in her expression. The numbers reflect it too. Guest satisfaction is up 23% across all properties. What had begun as a response to one incident had evolved into a company-wide revolution. The Dignity for All initiative had been implemented across every Mitchell hotel, with Bradley surprisingly becoming its most passionate advocate. Bradley's leading another training session today, Robert said. He's requested to take the program to our international properties next month. Beth smiled. Sometimes people just need the opportunity to be better than they are. Across the lobby, Emma emerged from the back office, accompanying a young man in a wheelchair. The change in her was perhaps the most remarkable. After her time at Beth's art program, she had requested a permanent reassignment to community relations, where she now coordinated a program that provided hotel internships to disadvantaged youth. Mrs. Mitchell, Emma waved, guiding the young man toward them. This is Marcus. He's starting in the culinary program today. Beth greeted the nervous-looking teenager warmly. Marcus was one of my art students last year, she explained to Robert. He has an incredible eye for detail. The executive chef is excited to have you, Robert told the young man, shaking his hand as Emma led Marcus toward the kitchens. Beth caught sight of Frank at his security post. The security protocols had been completely overhauled, with an emphasis on creating a welcoming environment while maintaining safety. Frank now trained all security staff personally, using his own experience as a teaching tool. Your mistake has turned into something pretty remarkable, Beth observed, linking her arm through her husband's as they walked through the lobby. Robert chuckled. My mistake was marrying an art teacher who wears trucker caps to 5-star hotels. He pulled her closer. The best mistake I ever made. They paused at the entrance where a new plaque had been installed. It read, At Mitchell Luxury Properties, we believe true luxury is treating every person with dignity and respect. We judge not by appearance, but by recognizing the inherent worth in each individual. Below was a quote that Beth had suggested from her favorite poet, We are more alike, my friends, than we are unalike. As they stood admiring it, Mrs. Pembroke, the woman who had tried to intervene during Beth's humiliation, approached them. Mrs. Mitchell, I've been meaning to thank you, she said. Beth looked surprised. Thank me for what? For changing this place. I've stayed at luxury hotels all my life, but this is the first time I've seen one with a soul. She glanced around the lobby. My granddaughter now volunteers at your art program. You know, she says it's changed her life. After Mrs. Pembroke moved on, Beth and Robert continued toward the exit. Outside, the afternoon sun illuminated the city streets, where people of all backgrounds moved about their day, each with their own story and dignity. You know what the best part is? Beth mused. What's that? Robert asked. This isn't just about one hotel or one incident anymore. Every person who experiences this change takes it with them. Bradley, Emma, and Frank will never see people the same way again. Neither will the guests who witnessed the difference. Robert nodded thoughtfully, one small ripple becoming a wave. As they walked away from the hotel, Beth still in her casual clothes and trusty trucker cap, they passed a street artist painting portraits on the sidewalk. Beth stopped to admire his work, engaging him in a conversation about technique and inspiration. The artist, initially surprised by her knowledge, soon relaxed into an animated discussion. Robert watched with quiet pride. This was the woman he had fallen in love with, someone who could move effortlessly between worlds because she saw the humanity in everyone. Later that evening, as they drove back to their countryside home, Beth gazed out the window at the passing city lights. "Something on your mind?" Robert asked. "I was just thinking about what happened 3 months ago," she replied. "How something painful turned into something beautiful." "That's your gift," Robert said simply. "Finding beauty where others see only problems." Beth turned to her husband with a smile. "No, that's our gift now. And think of all the people who will never know they were judged by their appearance because of what we've started." As they left the city limits heading toward the quiet sanctuary of their home, both knew that true change wasn't measured in corporate policies or training programs, though those were important. It was measured in moments of human connection, dignity recognized, and respect freely given. Sometimes those moments began with something as simple as a woman in a trucker cap walking into a luxury hotel, refusing to be defined by appearances alone.